All right, I wrote this 2 years ago, so bear with me. But this is a creative nonfiction piece called My Father and I. All right. My father never spoke to me growing up, and to this day I've never heard one word out of him. This isn't to say I haven't tried getting him to talk. Over the years I sent him over a novel's worth of instant messages. I drove up to his place every week to say hello. I even read his memoirs cover to cover. At least, I attempted to. That man had a lot of ghostwriters. Clearly, this radio static between us wasn't a mutual affair. And no matter how much I tried and begged and prayed for that wall between us to come crumbling down, it just never would. As a kid, I had to wonder if it was my fault. All the smart kids in my classes always claimed that he was talking to them. We would close our eyes every morning and afternoon, clasping our hands together and sending as many pleasant messages his way as we could. I'd tell him about my week, beg for him to help with my upcoming exams, and of course, thank him for being my father. Every time Kyle and Angelica, all the rest, would rattle on in an endless blur about how he had spoken back to them, how he had told them how he loved them so much. And every time the teacher would clap her hands and nod and excitedly look over to me, and she'd ask, "Matthew, how did your conversation go?" I would repeat, "It was great. He told me he loved me too." And I'd trail off from there, trying my best to one-up the others in any way I could. By now I'm convinced that those kids were just like me. Either that or they were all secret schizophrenics. Knowing how half of them acted on the daily, though, the latter is a real possibility. Now, this isn't to say that growing up I was some fully altruistic kid whose only desire was to talk to their daddy. Of course not. I was a real selfish brat growing up. If you've ever shopped in a CVS located just north of Daytona Beach, Florida in the late 2000s and seen a 4-foot baby wailing and screeching at decibels louder than you could imagine, wanting candy, then we very well may have met. So when you factor that, and my father is a very powerful man, a guy that can do just about anything, even breaking the realms of physics, it makes perfect sense that I'd go a little crazy with my requests. There was this, the simple stuff, getting nice gifts for my birthday, or asking for help finding my misplaced video games. Then there were the more difficult asks, winning the heart of my third grade crush, or convincing my parents to not get divorced. Some of these got fulfilled, a lot of them didn't. But if you combed through the mountain of letters on his doorstep, there would be one reoccurring plea you notice repeating ad nauseum. One simple ask, one little change painted in vivid colors upon the page. The next day I would wake up, everything would be exactly the same, with the only difference being that I had been born a girl. I don't know how the thought first popped into my head. It could have been my jealousy over how much cuter the girls' pleated uniforms and their skirts looked over my itchy khakis. How amazing it must have felt to constantly be labeled as cute or pretty. Or maybe it could have been from one of the many TV shows I saw during the 90s and 2000s that did an episode where their main character became a girl for the day. Episodes that would mysteriously be my go-to rewatch every single day. Parents never noticed. Whatever the reason, from the time I was in early elementary school all the way to late middle school, I would beg for my father to make this dream a reality. I would shut my eyes tighter than I ever did in school, recite entire speeches of all the things I would do the next day when my request had finally been pulled through. And then I'd wake up the next day, disappointed but never surprised. This became a pattern off and on for years of my life. The odd requests for money and popularity would still be sent my father's way, but overwhelmingly, this was what he got. An influx of requests turned demands, spitting in the face of his grand plan for me, fervently wishing for a life I knew very well I wasn't allowed to have. No one ever told me outright this dream of mine was wrong, but signs weren't hard to pick up on. The subtle jabs anytime I interacted with something labeled girl, the pushes for me to look and act in a way that a boy was supposed to be, and the frequent dinner-time radio and discussions talking harshly about those who tried to break gendered barriers through their own means. The message was clear. I couldn't discuss this secret with anyone. That is, anyone who actually spoke back. I remember vividly when the husband of my mother's close friend revealed that he was just like me. The key difference being that he had actually revealed his secret to the world, as she had fully started dressing and acting like a woman would. And when she arrived at my home, painted red nails, long flowy dress, and mid-length hair in tow, I felt this great disgust build up inside me. Whispers and remarks from my family only confirmed that this initial aversion of mine was justified, further solidifying in my mind the fact that my own dream was just as wrong as hers. Suddenly, my father's inbox completely dried up. I had no need for any more requests. After all, the only one I cared about was not meant to be. It would take years for me to start sending him messages again, but by then, only one request remained, to give me the strength to continue believing in him. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I were just a tad different. If I hadn't been forced to leave the private Catholic school I attended all the way up to the 3rd grade. If I continued to attend youth group beyond my confirmation. If I hadn't been introduced to and befriended people who had never heard of my father. People who, according to my family, stood against everything my father stood for. Would I still talk to him today? Would I have discovered things about myself that I had used him as an outlet to suppress? Would I be anywhere close to the person I am today? And if I had kept the faith, if I had continued to bottle up my thoughts and feelings and shared them with only him, would he have eventually finally reached out to me? I don't know, and I probably never will, but I'd like to think that I've made the right choice in moving forward anyways. From what I've seen, everyone I've ever known has had a different idea for what kind of person my father is. And whether that forecast is clear and sunny or heavy and storming, the same conclusion is always met. He's their friend, and he's on their side, a side that's ever shifting to conform with their vision of the world. An all-powerful, omnipotent being that with his infinite accumulation of knowledge always seems to line up with their under-a-century-year-old way of thinking. Like I said, I've never met the guy. Maybe I will someday? Who knows? But if I ever do get a chance to speak with him, if I ever meet the creator, the everything, the vast, the all-knowing, the ever-loving, self-made, all-powerful man that came to call himself Yahweh, I'll have to ask my father one simple question. Why? Because out of all the stupid demands I had as a kid, I've never understood why he could cure a man's blindness, but not make a little girl happy. Thank you.